Professional cycling has changed in many, many ways over the last couple of decades. And one subtle way, but nevertheless important, is the gear ratios that the riders are using. Now bear with me, this is actually very interesting. So we're in the Katusha Alpecin team truck. You can tell that because it's stacked full of beautiful red team bikes there. In this little cupboard, we have a selection of the cassettes, so the rear gears that the riders have at their disposal. Now, back 20 years ago, there would not have been half that selection. Riders would have used either an 11 to 21 or an 11 to 23. In extremes, perhaps 11 to 25. So lots of cogs all really closely spaced together. Now, however, the smallest cassette in here is 11 to 25. Then they have 11 to 26, 11 to 28, which they use most days, then 11 to 30, and even 4 11 to 32 cassettes up here that are reserved principally, it seems, for Tony Martin, who likes to spend all day riding around in his big chainring. So, it seems a little odd, doesn't it? Given that the roads have not got any steeper, bike technology has got better, riders are not going much slower, if at all, but yet their gears have got easier. I think we need to ask some questions. Jason is a former pro cyclist, and you've been team liaison for SRAM for what, 10 years now? So you were the guy that bridges the gap between teams and the manufacturer.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so you're pretty well placed then to comment on how gear selection, gear choice has changed over the last couple of decades.
I
right?
hope so, yeah.
Okay, so why are we seeing this shift then, if you'll pardon the pun?
Yeah, I think, we definitely see, like 10 years ago, an 1125 was the standard cassette. That's what everybody rode, and a mountain stage in the tour, they'd go to 26. Whereas today, a 26 or even the 28 is becoming the go-to cassette. And in the mountain stages, they'll ride 30 or 32. And but concurrently, you see that on the flat stages, they're riding bigger chain rings all the time. So the gear range in general is just, really expanded.
And so the reason it's expanded, is that a request from teams that you then fulfill, or is it a case of, riders are using compact chain sets and benefiting from wider gear ratios, just out in the mountains, so people who don't race, and therefore that's driving what the teams use?
No, we basically provide the teams what they would prefer to use from what we can offer, and the WiFli rear derailleur, where they can go up to a 32 cog, really gives them the flexibility to ride one bike for the whole tour, and they just need to change the cassette. They don't need to do anything like that with compact, and it just simplifies their whole life, basically.
Why are they doing it in the first place, though? Is it a fact that cadences are increasing, so how fast people are pedaling, or is it a case of, they're just going a little bit slower? I don't think that's the case.
Well, I think the riders are going slightly slower uphill. I think the bikes they're going probably faster on the flats, just from the whether it's the benefits of better training and much better aerodynamics on the bike than we had 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But if you look at videos from the 70s, you really see, they're doing a lot of this stuff, and today, really nice pedaling actions up the climb. So the whole style of cycling has changed, I think, just because of, now you have the possibility to ride those gears that guys in the 70s and 80s and even early 90s never had that possibility.
So riders are more concerned then with saving their legs and trying to inflict less damage on them so that they can effectively be fresher at the end of a 3-week race. But technology has also played a key part. So let's have a look in one of the Katusha drawers here. Now, this is a SRAM ETAP rear derailleur, and it is, you'll notice, a medium cage rear derailleur. So that bit there between the two jockey wheels is a little bit longer, and it's also what they call WiFli. And so what it does is it effectively means that this rear derailleur can be bolted onto the bike all year round, and the mechanics can swap effortlessly between 11 to 25 cassettes and 11 to 32, meaning that there is no extra work involved. Whereas back in the day, swapping between an 11 to 23 and an 11 to 28 would have involved potentially swapping out an entirely new rear mech, and indeed a new chain as well to make it slightly longer. So it's technological advances like WiFli that have actually enabled riders to save their legs, use more appropriate gears, and then go faster. Now the team does still carry what's called short cage rear derailleurs, so like this one here, you can see for comparison it is much smaller, but effectively it's only really for time trial bikes where they can be confident that the riders don't need any really light gears, because it's not often you climb super steep hills in time trials. So that'll be the reason why that's still there. Now one thing that the Katusha mechanics have told me is that actually the biggest fan of an 11 to 32 cassette is actually Tony Martin. Now he's arguably one of the most powerful riders in the peloton, and so why is a guy like Tony riding 11 to 32? Because that 32 is a big cassette, isn't it?
Absolutely, but he's got a 58 chainring on his TT bike, for instance, and so the 32 cassette really allows him to ride the big chainring almost the whole time, and that's what he's aiming to do. When it's fast down hills, he's really got the gear to get up to probably 75, 80 k's an hour, still pedaling, but not completely spun out or over revving.
So part of that larger cassette is actually just simply being able to stay in the big chainring for longer, and therefore not having to use the little ring at all?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that has hopefully shed some light on the evolution of gearing in the pro peloton. A mixture of rider preference dictating a need for smaller gears for faster climbing cadences, and then paired with technological development from components like SRAM WiFli. Do make sure you subscribe to GCN. To do so, just click on the globe, and then if you'd like some more content, why not see Tony Martin's TT bike with that monster 58 tooth chainring. And then we've also got my own little test of riding standard versus compact gears, and that was on the fearsome Mortarolo in Italy.